Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Gizmo Joe. If you watch my channel with any sort of regularity, you'll probably remember I did a video a couple weeks ago about this particular camera, which is the Sony A330. Quite an old camera by today's standards, but I picked it up on Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. Now, if you watched that video, you'll know that this has a faulty sensor, which was not mentioned in the Facebook Marketplace ad. So I paid the 50 bucks, brought it home, got a battery for it, and then realized that essentially the camera was, a fancy looking paperweight. So I was a bit disappointed because, 50 bucks for a DSLR, pretty good deal. But alas, it doesn't work. So what am I going to do with it? I could have thrown it away. I could have tried to pawn it off on somebody else, but I don't think that's particularly fair. Essentially, I was stuck with it, and I don't like to throw stuff away that has use. Now, the body here has no use. The sensor is shot. There's nothing that we can do with it. It's outputting photos in this awful pink-purple hue, so this is going to be junked. But the lens is fine. So I said to myself, what can I do with this lens? Well, because it's the Sony A330, this uses the Sony A mount, which is kind of antiquated. They don't really use it anymore. So you can't use this particular lens with a newer Sony DSLR because it just won't mount up. So I said to myself, what can I do with this? There's got to be something I can do with it aside from buying a really old Sony DSLR. Well, it just so happens that most of Sony's cameras nowadays use what they call the E-mount. What I have in my hand right here is a Sony NEX3 camera. I'm a big fan of the Sony NEX series. I won't do a separate review on this because I've already done a review on the Sony NEX5, which is essentially the same camera. The only difference with the NEX3 is that the video shooting capabilities of it are not as good. It only does 720p as opposed to 1080p, and other than that, it's pretty much exactly the same, aside from some stylistic differences, the way that the body actually is shaped and the buttons, placements, and all that sort of stuff. So there's not much difference here, so I won't do a separate review on this guy. But I didn't have a lens for him. I only had a body for him because I got it on eBay really, really cheap, and I saw it and I said, I got to pick this up. I don't care if it's a secondary camera or whatever. I need to grab it. So I picked it up, and I needed to find some way to mount this, which is, again, the Sony A mount, onto this Sony E mount camera. Well, I did a bit of digging, and sure enough, there's adapters that you can use, but they're all really, really expensive. And I said, for a secondary camera with a, old 18 to 55 millimeter lens, I don't want to spend a lot of money. Well, I did some digging on Amazon, and I found this particular company called Fotodiox. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's a lens mount adapter. Now, if we look at the box here, it doesn't really tell us much, but on the side here it says Sony A to Sony NEX. So I said to myself, it's only 20 bucks. Let's give it a whirl. So I ordered it from Amazon, and it came in, and you'll see here that it's pretty bare bones. I don't know anything about Fotodiox. If you guys know, drop me some comments. Let me know what you think, if you've had any experience with them in the past. But essentially, there's nothing in here. No manual, no warranty, nothing. It just says that it's a lens mount adapter, and that's it. So I can't say I was expecting more for 20 bucks, but let's take a look at it. So what you see here is a fairly hefty little mounting ring, and I have to say that it is metal. So you'll notice that it's got a lock and an unlock version, so that once it's mounted onto the body of the camera, it doesn't fall off. And it just says Fotodiox AF NEX. Other than that, there are no other markings. Now, you'll also notice, those of you who are interested in shooting in auto, that there are no electronic pins here. You'll notice that on this particular lens, as with most DSLRs, you have the electronic pins, which then, when you mount it to the camera body, line up with these electronic pins. Now, what that does is when you shoot in auto, essentially it communicates between the lens and the body of the camera what's going on in frame, so that when you're shooting in auto, it can kind of adjust everything to make the picture look as good as it can. But the issue with this adapter is that you do not have those electronic connectors anymore. So essentially, you're going to be shooting in all manual mode. So if you're not keen on shooting manually, then this probably isn't the product for you. But for me, because it's a secondary camera and I like shooting in manual mode, I thought that this would do the job. So let's just pop this on here. And sure enough, it clicks right on. So it's 100% an E-mount adapter. Now the big question is, will this guy fit onto this? Let's try it out. And sure enough, it's locked in and it's ready to go. So it adds a little bit of extra bulk to the Sony NEX3, but I have to admit that it is a heck of a cheaper option than some of the other adapters on the market. So if you have yourself an old, A-mount sort of lens, don't throw it out, don't give it away, don't junk it. If you got a Sony NEX or any other E-mount Sony camera, grab this adapter for 20 bucks. As long as you don't mind shooting in manual, it'll work. And I'll put up some photo samples so you guys can see some of the photos that I've taken with it. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, especially for $20. But I'll leave links down in the description for the Photodiox adapter if you are interested in picking one up yourself. Thanks for watching.